Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of March 17th. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, again, welcome everybody and happy St. Patrick's Day. Here we go. First off, we have the Colorado Peace Officers Standard and Training in Service Training Grant. Sheriff Nowlin.
Good afternoon. This is the annual in-service training grant that Colorado Peace Officers Standard and Training Board puts out every year. And what I'm requesting is the training and qualifications ammunition, as we always do, that's required by state statute, $5,082. They were saying something in the grant that they may only have about 4,600, but we'll see. They said apply. So that's all it is, pretty straightforward.
So this is straightforward just to the ammunition then.
Yeah, there's no matching monies, no nothing.
Just a reimbursement for whatever they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just be able to purchase whatever we can get.
Any
Okay.
questions?
No.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Very
thanks.
good. Push that towards tomorrow.
You bet.
And then we also have a discussion, as it's an IGA between Montezuma County BOCC and the Pueblo Community College for the Police Academy shooting range use. Travis.
Yes, sir. This is just an IGA between the commissioners and the PCC to use the range during their law enforcement academies. They get up to 4 opportunities per year. Basically, this is being done to ensure somewhat of a risk management liability. We're not charging the school anything to utilize the range. However, we found that there was no IGA between the schools or other organizations, so basically they're just going to have to follow our IGA. The state is, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, but they have some constitutionality protected for liability, so they jumped on board, but additionally they're also going to have the cadets sign a waiver to use our range in case something happens.
So basically, this holds us somewhat harmless during a training event. They're using our range, but at the school, they're going to school. Yeah, this was brought up last year then.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
we've been working on it for quite a while, so.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Stephen, or?
No, I think Travis is right, basically, that the state can't sign agreements to hold harmless or anything like that. So this is sort of informed by that idea.
Okay. All right. Questions, gentlemen?
No.
Okay.
I don't have any.
All right, moving on. Hazard Mitigation Plan Grant Signature Discussion.
That was.
So commissioners, this one is kind of a head scratcher to me. We got a bunch of different documents. We already have the grant. We obtained it in December, but now they're wanting us to do some additional signatures, lobbying activities, application for federal assistance. And I've never signed these. They thought I could sign them, but again, I don't think any of us have ever seen these documents. So
Correct.
we sent them
So-
off to Stephen for his review, and it should really be Commissioner Candelaria, or you can allow me to sign.
Right. So when this came to me, obviously, I know that you guys hadn't seen it because I hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, no, this needs to get in front of all of us before any kind of signatures are put on this at all, because it seemed somewhat odd to me to just come to me for signatures, and I didn't like that. So this is in front of us for all of us to be able to see, and then to get your take on this too, Stephen, because I don't like, or I think none of us are comfortable with seeing anything to sign prior to going through our legal counsel.
Mhm. Yeah, I wasn't able to open these files when I got them, so I haven't totally looked at them. Is this something through Jim Spratlin? Okay. Well, I'll get together with Jim.
How long is he out of town for? A week?
Okay.
Okay.
I can send them to you too. I
Can
mean,
you
I
just send
have
them directly to me, maybe? Yeah. The version I got, just none of the information was filled in, so it wasn't totally clear to me, what we were signing, so that'd be helpful.
And I think you have the whole package too, right, Travis?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll get it to you. I was just not comfortable signing it without any of us seeing it,
Yeah, that makes sense.
so. Okay. Well, we'll wait till we actually have Stephen review that so that we can make sure that we're on track.
Okay.
Okay. And that's all of that business. Now we'll have a discussion as it's related to the land use code and solar. So I guess basically after our conversation last week, this is our first discussion, basically to give planning and the planning commission the direction of how they want to build the blueprint for us moving forward. If you guys had the opportunity to review what was in the packet and then to read that NREL report, I think this is now where we need to then, to get the blueprint established for us to vote on. That's kind of where we're at right now. So I guess whoever wants to start.
Gerald, do you have anything? I run back to the roots of where we started with the land use code, and how we developed it. But we don't need to be all that intensive. But we still need to identify the hazards and ways to mitigate.
So is that strictly through decommissioning? Because it's specific in the NREL report, and it's specific. So I took Mesa counties, and I looked at it. I actually had a conversation with Commissioner Cody Davis. They did a moratorium, and if you read that resolution, they started in January, and by the end of April, they had their entire section that they added to their land use code adopted in there. And in there, it talks about, in their section 1201 in their general, and then section 1204, what they did, and they passed that on the 23rd day of April. So it specifically delineates the private energy facility, the energy generation production facility, a community solar garden, the agrivoltaics, behind the meter, the fire protections, and then the residential occupied structures. It was pretty well thought out, and then also to Fremont counties, which was just done towards the end of last year. So if decommissioning, it doesn't state it in Mesa counties that I saw for decommissioning so specific, Stephen, unless I'm wrong, but the NREL report goes along into decommissioning along with assurities, which the assurities, and I think it goes to your point, Commissioner, of how do we make sure that it is DC'd properly and then returned to prior use. I think that's what you're at. And if you read the NREL report, using the maps of the NRCS office, there's a baseline already established, and the assurities that you can put into effect between 3 and 5, 5 and 7, and then on. I think that's the bigger point. I think that's something that we need to discuss. I didn't see assurities in Mesa counties. I like the assurities when it comes to the decommissioning plan. The only thing that I did not catch in theirs unless I just missed it, Stephen. But it's really the number of years of what you guys would like to put in there, or if you even want them. I think it's like a mine, it would probably be a pretty good idea to have that surety in there.
Well, I think so,
So,
definitely.
and they're reevaluated too. So we can do it, like I said, there were 3 different criterias for length of time. Because as normal, just like our landfill, costs go up. Any recommendations on that, Stephen?
I guess what concerns me about that whole deal is trying to, like, if these people come in and they lease this property, and once they get their solar field put in, and then they sell it off to the next company that's producing the electricity. 5 years down the road, that company files bankruptcy.
And walks.
That's when the surety would kick in.
That's what I want to make sure we have,
So-
that is not gonna go away with changing these ownerships. And whether that company should disappear down the road due to bankruptcy or whatever, I don't want Montezuma County stuck with this. That's my concern.
So let me read this to you and see if you guys, because this language actually stuck out to me pretty well. Item number 2 under G of decommissioning, and this one is from Mesa County, so that's the reference. It says within 12 months of ceasing operation, that the operator shall complete decommissioning of the facility, which may include removal of all above ground and below ground equipment and structures, and removal of any access roads and fire breaks unless previous agreements have been made with the property owner. And then it has, several underneath that. But that was pretty specific to, if they do leave within 12 months of the ceasing of operation, the operator shall then, and that's why I liked the assurity in there also, because if they do go bankrupt, to your point, and they are gone, then the assurity would kick in and it would take care of it. So I didn't see that in anything of the decommissioning here, but I don't think it would be too tough to add that. Because really what I want to do is be able to give the clear direction to the planning commission to say, build us the blueprint. But without any guidance, it's going to be hard for them to build a blueprint. So did you?
Yeah, commissioners, I think Commissioner Candelaria's points are kind of directly addressing the question that the board has raised, which is, would it be helpful to have more specific criteria than are currently in our land use code? Because already in our land use code, in our high impact permit process right now, we have criteria that contemplate a mitigation plan for effects, including plans for winding down activities and service and facility demands when the construction or operation of the project is complete, for controlling, restoring, or remediating any impacts that will continue after the construction or operation of the change in land is completed, plans for controlling and remediation of hazardous, toxic, or explosive substances that are used. It can include plans for monitoring the effectiveness of mitigation measures. I think that's all a framework that's not specific to any of the types of mitigation measures that the board might ask for. So, but it doesn't foreclose those either, and it gives the board a way to make that request. But I think Commissioner Candelaria's point is, for the planning department and for the, the planning and zoning board, if the board does adopt specific criteria, can direct the process sort of to those criteria. It might just make the process smoother I think it might help communicate what it is the board's ultimately going to be looking for. But I think it's also true that the provisions that are in our land use code now arguably could also get us basically to the same place in terms of the concerns that the board has about, you know, any part of the operations of a project that requires a high impact permit, that the board can require something through this mitigation plan process, and then could also in evaluating any application can also approve the project with conditions to address anything that additionally would need to be addressed, such as maybe additional mitigation measures or, you know, whatever those issues end up being, that's something sort of less specific in our code. But I think just by reading other provisions in our code, I mean, it's not something that's disallowed, right?
Correct. So,
There's not much disallowed in our code.
Right.
I'm going to get, I think, which is to your point, Commissioner, and if it's not, just correct me, but this is more specific to the whole decommissioning plan. So in our land use code now, it says mitigation measures. So I think what your concern is if they go bankrupt or whatever the case might be, and the only mitigation measure is to, I don't know, keep the weeds from growing, or I don't know, whatever it might be, it doesn't basically speak to the actual DC of that property. Was that more your concern, or?
Yeah, it is. I guess just the whole, it's just like Ironwood up there right now. Look how many hours our attorney has spent on that mess.
That's why I'm saying if we actually
And you
put
get
the,
down the road and we end up in the same kind of mess, and our attorneys are spending all their time, we're trying to make sure that this all happens like it's supposed to.
that's why I'm saying I like, instead of the mitigation measure that's in there now, because of the same situation we're in, if we put a DC plan in place with the assurity, because we don't have an assurity up there. We didn't have it.
Oh, I know.
But
That's what I
if we
mean. I
put
mean,
it
we
in
got
there-
it.
With the DC plan, then it would be specific to the planning department going forward to make it very spelled out that here it is. I think that was mostly your concern.
Yeah, it is.
So reading, I mean, Don, I'm going to ask you a question too, so I'm going to ask you to come up, but I don't know if you've had the chance to look at all of these that we got sent in our packet, but would it not make it easier for you as a planning department to say, hey, if somebody brings an application in and we already have these in there, without these in there, the application is not complete, correct?
Correct, yeah,
So-
because then you take some of the vagueness out.
We
That
take all the vagueness out, which I agree with you, Stephen, we could do it through mitigation measures, but I think to make, and I think it would set everybody at ease if we specifically delineated it, just like Mesa County did. And it's not egregious, but if you don't have the plan, and again, the only thing that I would like to add, and you could probably put it under item 5, is an assurity, and I actually have had a conversation with Don, and I think you would agree, it's just a matter of when do we reevaluate it, because in that NREL report, it gave us 3 different criterias for evaluation. So that's kind of what we need to talk about, and then it showed you the different counties in Colorado that actually have assurities. But the 2 that I think are the best roadmaps for you all without a whole lot of work, and then also too, well, I had Commissioner Davis on the phone. He had also said that he had reached out to the press in Colorado storage and solar, I did forward that number on to Don, just to make sure that that we're communicating with everybody, which is what they did. So that we have that outreach, and the process has already been done. The only thing that I would like to add would be the assurity, and specifically the, under the decommissioning, but everything else is real simple. And then, to your point, Commissioner Lindsay, one thing else that I did like in here, which we're going to end up having to address sooner than later, because we know it's coming, is under the energy generation / production facility, it's defined as a facility designed to generate electricity by the conversion of natural resources such as light, fossil fuels, nuclear, or water.
Yeah.
And I really like that, because that's the conversation that's happening throughout the state right now. And this way we capture it, but we would also capture with it the decommissioning part of that equally. So that's kind of my take, and I'm going to stop talking and I'll let you guys talk. That's just the research that I've done. And I did talk to Commissioner McFall from Fremont County, and I did talk to Commissioner Hanson from Montrose County also. So I'm going to stop.
I guess even before we go to decommissioning, because I guess listing concerns to start with. And how are we identifying those in our plan? The list of impacts are pretty long for something this big. But one thing that our plan, and you might correct me, is cultural resources. There's got to be some cultural resources out there.
Oh, yeah. We request that they contact CDOT, that they do an ARC site analysis, that they contact Parks and Wildlife for migrations, wildlife, geologic investigations, floodplains, wetlands. So even though they're not delineated and prescriptive in our land use code, I mean, those are just basic analysis that need to be done for something of that size and magnitude covering that much property.
What about road impacts?
So road impacts, I just let them know how Road and Bridge coordinates and works with Kinder Morgan. They actually post a bond strictly for the road maintenance, plowing, dust control, and possibly rebuilding at the end of the project. So I think that's been working out real well. And I would defer to that versus trying to come up with a road impact fee that may not touch anything at the
Okay.
point of completion of construction or at decommissioning. Because it's unforeseen what's going to happen to any section of road over time during a 2-year, part of construction and traffic.
Right.
Because you not only have the delivery of the materials, but you've got the workers that are out there day in and day out.
What about glare? I mean, that's a
Well,
hard one to do.
Glare's a hard one, because the panels are designed not to have glare. They're
I
designed
guarantee you they do.
to absorb light versus glare reflecting and transmitting light. I guess that's another one of those subjective items that's really hard to quantify. The panels are movable so that they try and match perpendicular direction to the sun. So you're going to eliminate more glare than just if they were all at horizontal to the ground and the sun hit them from every angle during the course of a day, and there you get more glare and reflective.
So if I can refer back to this one, it talks about setbacks as far as ranges from mileage from roadways and scenic roadways or byways. It talks about a fire prevention and safety plan, the visual mitigation, which it goes into that pretty prescriptive. And then it talks about the agrivoltaics. The only thing they did there was remove a height restriction so that they would be high enough to have agricultural underneath them. But then they also then address specifically under F, wildlife, wetlands, riparian areas, streams, channels, measures, prior to it ever going to a high priority habitat. So, and those would be all way before the decommissioning plan. I think it would just, if we lay something like this out, then it would be inclusive with the application prior to ever
Yeah.
being submitted, and it's pretty well laid out.
What about battery storage?
That should also be included.
Yeah, it's
As-
addressed in here also.
I didn't catch that.
So typically your battery storage,
mean,
I have had conversations where they would take it directly off the power lines, but generally it's connected to a solar farm where they're storing
Yeah.
power.
So for example, in the Fremont County Code, that's part of the package today, they have a little section, special provisions for battery facilities. In addition to the above, there's this requirement that battery energy storage facilities shall be constructed, maintained, and operated in accordance with the national industry standards and regulations, including the most current adopted edition of the National Electrical Code, International Fire Code, and the National Fire Protection Association Fire Code. The batteries will be National Fire Protection Agency compliant. So it sounds like there are some like best practices, basically. That's how I understand that. I haven't read any of those things, but I'm sort of getting out of that there is a way to do this. And so at least Fremont County is saying, you know, if you're building something with this battery technology, you've got to meet these industry standards, basically.
Right, we just want to be clear that they're meeting the industry standards for that specific operation and that we're not adopting
Correct. It
those
would be-
energy
It would be
standards.
for that because we don't have any of those standards adopted at all. Because they're gonna be falling under the 2021,
That we can put in there shall comply with.
I think that's all it said
Yeah.
is to the industry
Right.
standard. So the BMPs would all be to that industry standard. So going back to section 1201 in the general, under the community solar garden, which addresses that, a solar power generating facility designed to produce electricity as defined in CRS 40-2-127, a community solar garden may include battery storage equipment as accessory equipment. So that's part of the accessories in Mesa counties. But like I said, between Mesa and Fremont, if we were to meld those together, I think that we would have an alternative energy source that makes sense. But that's after reading them. And the only thing, again, like I said, in the NREL report, I really like the assurities that are in there that they recommend. And then also looking at an NRCS map, to make sure that we don't get irrigated agriculture out of play. And that's where they're referencing the maps. And I mean, you guys have got that. It's pretty specific with both of those, the criteria that can be set forward. So these were both done last year that are both actually pretty dang good. So
Does that help you?
those are my comments. I don't know if does that give you enough direction to meld this together, Don? Or do you need more guidance?
I think it would be best if you highlight the parts of them.
So for me, I could highlight Mesa County's all of it and add item 5 under decommissioning
Right.
for me, and that would put me at ease, along with adopting their descriptions of the utility productions and the general. Because it does then capture nuclear.
Yeah.
And it also captures the decommissioning plan for both. Because that's a conversation that's gonna come up, and it's coming quickly.
Sure.
So,
Well, I think we also need a guideline on what is or isn't available to go to our landfill.
Good point.
Because
if you go by what NREL says, it's all recycled. How do you guys wanna look at that?
Where's it recycled at? Do we have to transport it out of here?
I think that would be up to
yeah,
the assured.
we don't want to say, oh, it's all recyclable. Landowners, there you go.
Yeah.
I think,
The closest
Because
facility would be in
I've heard that
Mexico at this point in
conversation. It's
time.
like, oh, well, if it gets left there, the farmers will make out big time on recycling. Well, yeah, until you take into the manpower and machinery and equipment, transportation and everything else to get it gone and get it somewhere.
well, I think even under our code now, that's conditions that the board could put
You
on.
can do it now.
Any potential developer would be, hey, you need to mitigate the impacts, including removal of, whatever is installed on a property. But certainly, if the board does want to develop these additional criteria like we're talking about, I think there's a way to,
Yeah.
I think like we're seeing as far as a plan for decommissioning, it's not necessarily the board's job, in the way I'm understanding it, to say this is exactly what you're going to need to do, but I think any applicant would need to have a plan to present to the board for how they're going to deal with that issue.
And then that's where the assurity comes into play. So it would be just like me, if I bid a job and I bond it, and halfway through the project, we can't finish it, well, the insurance company takes over, they hire whoever they need to get to finish it, it still falls under the same criteria, specs, and plan, so it would be up to them. That's why, for me, I would like to add that, but that's just me, one person, I mean, I get,
Most definitely.
I think that would really put us more,
What do you suggest as a review period? 5 years?
I would
7
say
years?
probably 5 years. I mean, I think earlier than that would be, I think that would be too much. Because I don't even think on mines, they probably review that quick, but that would just be a suggestion. I mean, we could, that NREL report gives us, what different counties have done. But I think that way you're at least looking at what's happening every 5 years and seeing what the industry's doing, and then we have a better idea. I don't think that would be too quick. I guess.
No, that's reasonable, because any construction should be 100% done.
Absolutely. But you wouldn't start it until post-construction, just like
Yeah.
if we were doing a job.
But I think you would
It would
also
be
evaluate it as you go.
Yeah.
Because if they get to the point where they're not getting the construction done and it's dragging out, you're also evaluating that, so they don't piecemeal it for 10 years. Because then you still have the construction traffic and operations going on for way too long.
Yeah.
And
So
I
I would
know rights
say
of way and pipeline corridors and
Because we
everything
don't
else
want to
in our
hear
plan.
about pandemics and supply chain issues and blah, 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 and
tariffs.
it just goes on and on and on.
So I'm gonna ask you guys, which one did you like best? Mesa's or Fremont's?
I think I liked, of all of them, Mesa's looked pretty good. I mean, Delta County had one, and that, whatever I sent you out of Montana looked pretty good.
As it relates to the western slope,
Yeah,
Mesa's a lot more specific than Delta's.
right.
Yeah,
A lot
And,
more specific.
yeah. it's
Logan's
awesome.
was,
It definitely is.
Logan's was just for a solar garden. They're not very big.
And then this captures, like I said, the N-word that
Yeah.
we're all gonna start, that we all have to start thinking about and looking at along with water. So that's why my vote would be to meld this along with the assurity in there, and I already have mine marked up, I'll give it to you. If that's all you need from us, along with how it's, the only other thing that maybe, do we want to look at the NRCS maps to, again, include that? Because that was pretty specific
think
in the
so.
NREL. Because you can't, if you need 100 megawatts, you're not going to have just whatever that occupies. You're going to have probably 1.5 or 1.75 or two
Right.
times
Yeah,
the
'cause you-
acreage, because you're only going to be able to,
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
that?
The terrain and the geography and
Yep,
arc sites
yep.
break it up a lot.
Migration is one of them, I think, too, that they split it up for the
Yeah.
elk and stuff. Deer.
I mean, you look at what we had to go through just to build a bridge out on County Road N. Snakes and butterflies and mice and birds, whatever else. Our construction window was pretty small.
Okay, so it sounds like me, Don and I will
You gotta start.
work together on kind of transforming, starting from the Mesa County kind of template on some proposed criteria.
And the planning people might have, the planning commission might have some ideas too.
Yeah, we have them plumbed up to
Okay.
have a meeting.
Thing is, I don't know that those maps are so,
Well, it has to be a current map. And we
Yeah, I
have
don't
our
know how all
GIS
those maps
department,
are
so-
from the NRCS.
Well, we have our current maps too of our own.
Yeah.
So we can, like I said, we're gonna have to meld this, cause it's
Mhm.
our county. It's not gonna be just specific to any one report.
Right.
But without giving you the direction that we need to give you, you can't, I can't ask you to draw me a blueprint and not knowing if it's a 3-bedroom or 10-bedroom house with 6 bathrooms or 1.
Right.
So I think that's what, to task them with anything, we have to give them the direction.
Well, this
To
is,
task
this is
them
how
out.
we started writing the rules for the
Yeah.
land use code. We get together and talk and kinda mold it a little bit and come back and say, oh, no, don't wanna go that way, we wanna go this way. I mean, that's a pretty general description, but it took a couple of months just to get that set up and running.
Right.
So
Kinda.
I'm gonna write on here, these are my recommendations or suggestions, and then I'll let you guys meld them together and go from there.
I guess the only other question, just thinking about it, would be any variation in the application fee?
Yeah, I think it's something to think about how it makes sense to
This
to
is
do
gonna
that,
take-
because I would anticipate anyway that it would be a really significant staff effort too, to review everything, and
Yes,
um,
yeah.
so we can give some thought to what that looks like, and may have to revisit it, I guess, over time, as you get a better sense of how much of an effort it is to review something like this.
Right.
I would think if, so Donna and I had this conversation too, because they had sent us some emails to all of us about reviewing fees for the planning department. We sat down last Thursday along with Travis, and we came up with some true costs, because like you said, Stephen, in your email back to us, that constitutionally, we can't be unconstitutional and just charge just an arbitrary number. So we actually sat down, we took wages, benefits of the planning department, we put actual hours to them, and we came up with numbers for some different fees that Don was specifically asking answers for. And I think we can use that same criteria moving forward with, and again, this is gonna be somewhat of a wag because we don't really know yet what it's gonna take, but we can project that. And at the end of the day, if we were way high, then we can also reimburse. The way I understand the statute, is that not correct?
I didn't look at that issue specifically. I can
Okay,
look at that, but the basic idea is that fees have to be related to the cost of processing
Yep.
whatever it is that's being done, essentially. That's the short version.
so, which is exactly what we did Thursday. Travis and Don and I sat down to actually really figure out what is it taking our planning department per application. So we can do the same thing and then come up with that number. I don't know what it is right now, Don, but it'll change. So, good point.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you either. Over 5 years, it's a lot of time.
That's it. I mean,
And then we get the application, so.
Yeah. Did Cody mention anything what they did up at Mesa?
he didn't, but we didn't even ask that. So trust me, I can send out another email to some commissioners and I can find out within 24 hours. And I'll do that. As soon as I get done, I'll get to a computer and I'll get that done. But we might be able just to pull it up off of their websites too. But here again, their planning department could be larger. I mean, they're
Oh, I'm sure theirs is.
5 times a larger county than we are.
Sure.
So it's probably gonna be a different number. But if we use the math of what we currently have, we could probably come up with something pretty close.
Fair enough.
Does that give you,
Yeah, I'll talk to Don too and go over what you guys came up with and think about it and just try to come up with a good way to deal with that.
Okay, very good.
we'll just give them the whole thing,
What's that?
just initial it. Those are just my recommendations. If you wanna just say,
No, Mesa County's deal was,
please.
I mean, by far the best as far as I was concerned, to fit us. You know, so as long as we have this,
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I'm sure you'll have a bucket full of questions.
Well, I'm sure as we go,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we gotta start somewhere, so I think that was helpful to get some direction.
yeah, and
Well,
again,
yeah.
I've also sent Don the phone number that Cody had sent to me for the solar industries. I can't remember the guy's name, but I sent you the number so that we have different communications there too. Okay,
All right.
all right. One last thing, if I may.
Sure.
A totally different subject, but it is related to the board.
Shift gears.
I gotta shift gears a little bit. It is not on our agenda, and I don't know if I can ask the question,
There's
so
that clause down there.
I'm looking at, I know there is a clause, and Commissioner Lindsay is very well aware of this, that we had a board member of the Housing Authority pass away.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Sorry to hear
So
that.
we need to start advertising for a new board member so that we can appoint a board member. And it's not on here, but
Yeah.
it just came up in the last, week.
Yeah.
So is there any issue with discussing it to get those advertisements out?
I don't think there's gonna be a problem with that,
Okay,
so.
all right. Well, I just wanted to bring it up sooner than later. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all.